On this Byron Lazine podcast, we go very different from any other podcast where we're typically talking to real estate CEOs and team leaders and big thought leaders in the space. But I have a huge thought leader in the video production space, my video producer, Bobby Kowecki. He produces all of the BAM content that you see. We talk about how we actually met, how Gary Vaynerchuk and D-Rock were involved in that, how we're breaking down all of the content you see, how Bobby is producing it, and all the equipment necessary to do just that. This is wildly informative. Hope you enjoy the pod. This one was fun. Well, brother, this is a little different with you being on this side.
Super different
of the camera. I want to talk about a whole bunch of things: how we're creating content, the best way to create content, how to do a podcast setup. We're doing content on the road. We're doing it in studio. We're doing it virtually. We're doing it a number of different ways. But before I get into that, Bobby,
okay,
I want to kind of give everybody the story of how we found each other. I know there's a lot of business entrepreneurs, real estate professionals that are listening and have thought about and or are looking for their own video producer, a videographer. How do they find that person? Can they get somebody part-time? Should they get a freelancer? Can they hire in-house? And where do you look for this type of talent? And so there's two parts to this. We'll give the story about how we started working together. But just the other day when you were talking to, when we were at Tomo's headquarters, talking to Greg Schwartz, and you said you had this degree, some fancy degree in
very fancy degree,
filming, right, in New York, some fancy New York school. I didn't even remember that you had this degree, so I do want to. That's like part two of the story of how we started working together. I didn't remember it until you said it because
it's all good.
Because when I hire people, when I look at resumes, and between the real estate company, BAM, the media company, I don't know. I probably have close to 25 W-2s, and then there's VAs, and there's we have our
wonderful intern. We have a big operation.
We have Bobby's assistant of the summer, our Yukon intern,
Haley for the win,
who's running this pod. I never look at where they went to school, and I know because when you mentioned it the other day, I was like, I didn't even realize Bobby had some fancy filming school because it never matters to me, but we'll get to that in part two. First, how did we find each other? You can tell the story.
When Bobby met Byron. Okay, so this is one of those like 1 in a million type stories that still doesn't seem real to me, and it's awesome. So one night,
everything had to fall into place.
1 second difference, and everything would have been completely different, right? So I was on Twitter one night working a totally different job right when the pandemic started.
Not in this industry.
Not in this industry. Before that, I was doing sort of gopher work and behind the camera, in front of the camera, like extra work on just sets, right? Just job to job, almost like you would
But you had a full-time job that was what? You were doing some kind of sales, right?
Yeah, so once the pandemic happened, basically filming shut down in New York. Bills got to get paid, and I started doing cold calling for a local home heating company, basically calling people and getting them to lock in their home heating rates for the upcoming season. It was cool. I mean, I love sort of the sales environment. It's just not what I liked. I'm good at it, I'd like to think, right? Like I enjoy having conversations, and I think I can provide
you like to talk, Bobby.
Value to customers and stuff like that, but it's not where my heart is. It's not where I feel like my best skill set is. And that's always been in content creation. So it's pandemic. I'm working this job. I'm working from home. Money's fine, but not super great. I'm just trying to grind and keep going. And one night I'm on Twitter and I see D-Rock, Gary V's creative director, executive producer.
Who's probably been working with D-Rock with Gary V.
Since the beginning.
10 years, 10 plus years. They've been,
Since since Gary V really blew up, I feel like D-Rock has always been in that conversation. And he had retweeted you. And your tweet was just like, hey, looking for a video producer. And I think it was Connecticut, tri-state area or something where it was close enough where I was like, oh, okay, cool.
And D-Rock retweeted my tweet because I tagged him in it.
Mm-hmm.
I added him because I know how passionate he is about the content creation, the video production industry. And because they're based in New York, D-Rock living in New York, I said, hey, maybe he'll see this tri-state area, looking for somebody in the industry. At the time, actually, VaynerMedia was doing layoffs.
Yep.
So I'm like, just maybe, we're growing, we're expanding into COVID. They're obviously 100 times bigger of a company. They're laying off. Maybe there's some type of somebody that he may show this to. I didn't think he was going to retweet it, but he retweets it.
And I liked your tweet and just went about my day. Like I didn't think anything of it. And this was probably like, I don't know, like 6 o'clock at night. Like I had just finished up my other gig that I was doing. Was in the middle of dinner, and then you DM'd me. You're like, hey, I like your stuff, or something along those lines. Let you have time to jump on a quick call. And I was like, sure, why not? So we jumped on a call, and there was something there was a click there. Like I liked your strategy for content, and I hope that I said something probably right, where it was like, okay, I'll be in touch later on this week, and then Saturday. So that was probably like Thursday. Saturday morning, you, me, and Jill jumped on a call, like first thing in the morning. And it was during that call where I was like able to really get a picture of the content machine that you had built. And I don't know what I was thinking at the time, but I asked you when you do your podcast, and you're like, oh yeah, we film on Tuesday. And I was like, great, I'll be there on Tuesday. Like I didn't even wait for you to call me back. I was just...
Yeah, you jumped right in and you just took initiative, and you're like, I'll be there. And at the time, you're living in Long Island.
In Long Island, yeah.
I'm in Connecticut at the time, and so it's a big drive. It's easier actually to get from where you were to where I was by boat over the Long Island Sound.
Yeah.
But you're like, I'll be there Tuesday first thing in the morning. We'll do an in-person interview, and I'll check out the podcast the way you're doing the Real Word. I was like, all right, sure. I'm not going to stop you. Come out here because, I'd love to meet you and see what it... I mean, I was getting so many DMs, by the way, from that D-Rock retweet of people just like, I want a job interview. Because when D-Rock retweets something like that, it validifies it. Yeah. And so there was a lot of interest. And Twitter has been such a great... This is a hack for everybody listening. Twitter has been such a great business meetup, more so than LinkedIn to me, because it's a real conversation. For years, I've used Twitter in this way, not hiring people, but meeting people in the industry that I want to meet. So just a little side note there. And it's funny that, this all worked out through Twitter. So yeah, anyways, we do the in-person meeting, the in-person pod. And that day, you were like, I'll move to Connecticut
the next week,
like literally next week, to take this job. You're like, I'm working this job in sales, heating fuel, definitely not my passion. And, I'll give them the appropriate, 1 or 2 weeks, whatever I got to give them. And I will start this like now. My wife's willing to move.
Yeah.
I was like, have you talked to her? This has been like, 48 hours here. And we did that. You relocated within 30 days into Connecticut.
So that Saturday, we talked, you, me, and Jill on Zoom. Tuesday, I came here to the office for the interview. The following Saturday, I moved into my apartment.
Yeah, one of the agents actually helped.
Yeah, it was Jess Hoover.
Yeah,
exactly.
That was awesome. All right, so I know for sure I never considered. I mean, you were working a job at a heating fuel company, so the college experience at that point, even if I saw it, and I don't think we did a resume. Did we do a resume? I don't think we did.
So at all,
I think it was just your initiative of like, one, I was so impressed that you jumped on a phone call that night, like at 7 o'clock, after dinner time. You were like ready to go, super engaged. We chatted early Saturday morning on a Zoom or whatever, and then you came to the office. Like that stuff to me, running a business, is way more impressive than your resume. And I know for a fact that even if it came up that you went to the school, you were just working a job non-related to, so I would completely discount the schooling at that point in my mind. And here's why. And so this is part B of this whole, and then we're going to get into like how we're creating content and the setup and all that stuff. The reason why I don't care about the schooling really with anybody I hire, but particularly in this case, is I've seen so many people come out of school, whether it's for business or for an industry like this, and they have to be taught what's relevant right now for the business, for the operation of creating content. You know, you can go to film school, and I've never been to film school, and Haley's in film school right now or something like that. And I don't know really what they're teaching you, because everything that we're doing to make short clips, to create long form podcasts so that we have short form clips, so that we have a blog, they're not teaching you that.
No.
No. Dissemination of content. This is what Gary Vee started doing, basically, and this is what every business needs, is this social presence that is speaking, yes, to the algorithms, but the way people want to consume content on platforms, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, etc. And so even when you started working with us, it's like, Bobby, this is what we're doing now. I'm not saying it's right, because I see huge areas for improvement. Here's where we need to get to. And there was a lot of learning we made adjustments probably every single week over the first 6 to 12 months. I mean, we've been going at it for 18 months. I mean, listen, I don't know, where were we in Real Word episodes when you came on?
Oh,
because we're at 230 now.
230 this week, so figure.
So I guess you came in at maybe 150 or something. Yeah. So 150. I had already done 170 something episodes on a show prior to that, unnamed, that I was literally editing on Windows. And so the iterations over time, I mean, we've exponentially grown from where we were, based on your commitment, your willingness to learn, and all that stuff to me is more important than the schooling. But you tell me, because I'm telling you how I feel about the schooling. What foundation did that give you? What kind of relevance to what we're doing today did that have? Where was the school? All of that. Break it down.
So it was New York Film Academy. And
sounds fancy.
Sounds super fancy. Right. I have a really nice backpack and sweatshirt from there, but that's about it. Nothing that I learned there. So the joke I make all the time is, I spent money on film school, but learned everything that I use day to day from, oddly enough, cold calling and Peter McKinnon on YouTube, right? Like,
so more education from
for free,
a content
basically.
creator on YouTube.
Yep, 100%. And you learn by doing, right? So in that 18 months, we've iterated and sort of, you know, our mantra here is get a little bit better every day, because it's, okay, how do we tweak the sound? How do we tweak the camera? What is the best angle? What is the best content output?
And I'm pretty anal about all of it.
And it's the best way to be. Like, we say all the time, like, this is a great work environment, but it's not a work environment for everybody, because we hold each other accountable for, hey, that shot was good, but it wasn't great. How do we get it to be great, kind of thing? Like, how do we optimize the content so that it is, every time we put something out, there's, you know, nothing left on the field, right? And that takes time, but that's not something that you learn in film school watching Bringing Up Baby or it's an old movie or like On the Waterfront and understanding like the Meisner method. All of that is great. The one thing I did take from film school though, and I use more now when we're doing our agent clips, is being able to speak multiple production languages, right? So the thing I actually thought was great was they had the directors, because there was a directing major, there was an acting major, they had the directors take acting classes, right? Because it's very hard to ask something of someone in terms of a finished product if you're not able to communicate that with them, right? So of value, I think that was the most important thing about understanding that sometimes you need to meet people where they are in terms of communication to get them to the finished product they envision, but also what you know will perform well on social and for the company as well.
What I like about you is, and I've met so many people, I mean, we have a bunch of editors, and, you know, I know so many people in this space, which is kind of weird because, you know, I'm a real estate sales guy that over the last decade has blended into the media side and, you know, meeting a whole bunch of different content creators and artists, right? Is that oftentimes, which is not what you do, oftentimes artists, and which is why it's hard if, you know, if you're an agent listening where it's like, I've just had a tough time finding a videographer or a video producer, is that the artist will say, it needs to be done this way because this is how I like doing it. This is my passion for doing film. And it's a bunch of bull.
Yeah.
Okay. Their passion means nothing to the market. Mm-hmm. And this is something Gary Vee nails. The market doesn't give a shit how you feel. It doesn't care about your passion for the art, because 99.9% of the creator's passion for something isn't going to relate to what the consumer wants.
I mean, it's why, like, if you think about it, it's why superhero movies make so much more than art films, right? Because it's what the market dictates is popular at that point in time.
If you need more time back, you need to scale your business, you need to stop doing administrative tasks, you need to hit the link below for Virtue Desk. I have hired VAs for multiple years. It's helped me scale my business like nothing else I could have done. You're listening right now to the video production podcast. Bobby, who is the video producer that does all of the BAM clips, he has VAs under him. So you can get VAs from Virtue Desk that are marketing mindset based, that maybe have can help you with editing, can also help with maybe just the administrative tasks so you can dive more into the marketing. You're an executive assistant, an ISA making calls to you. There's so many different VAs that Virtue Desk trains and gets ready to work for you. So hit the link below for Virtue Desk. Make sure you're checking out what services they have to help you get your time back and grow your business.
Right? They're not the most artsy films on the planet, but what makes money.
One of the great Gary Vee quotes is, the market is the market is the market.
Yep.
Right? And so you got that from day one when we started working together. And this is the mindset part of finding a great video producer. Somebody that understands right now to run BAM, Broke Agent Media, to run the real estate company, to run these businesses. We need to be relevant on the platforms that people are spending their time on: TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels. And we need to make content that has the 3-second hook that everybody's talking about right now, that we started focusing on 7 months ago, the 3-second hook.
Like, even before the start of the new year, yeah.
And now everybody's focused on the 3-second hook, the 3-second hook. But you got that from day one, that we need to be creating content that the market is consuming, not necessarily what we like, because what we like doesn't matter. The other part of that is you've had incredibly thick skin for 18 months.
You have to.
And it's like, I mean, we have this inside joke. We always, well, that was pretty diabolical,
that was
right?
Diabolical.
Like, and sometimes people would hear that, like, they're working for somebody, and it's like, you just called my work diabolical, or, you know, we made this mistake. And it, like, instead of, you know, we just get straight to the point. Hey, Bobby, like, we messed this up. Like, why did we do that? How do we make this better? Let's move in a better direction than this. This was diabolical. We say diabolical all the time.
All the time.
But you never get offended. You're just like, great, how do we fix it? Positive attitude, committed, accountable. How do we go? I mean, that's probably something that's just natural to you, but you have had incredible thick skin this entire time.
I think that comes from, oddly enough, a combination of two things: going on auditions, doing acting things, and also working in sales. Because although you might think that they're not similar, they are. If you walk into an audition room and by the time you're done with your slate, which is just, my name is, I'm reading for X, they already know if they want you or not by the time you're even done introducing yourself, right? So that plus, hey, Byron, this is Bobby over here at Home Heating Service. I'd love to talk to you today about your rates, is a lot different than, Byron, how you doing? Bobby over here. Your rate's up. How you been? Right? Like, it's a very different conversation and tenor. Yeah. So the joke I said to you the other day is, all creators should work in sales, because it is the most galvanizing thing in the world to spend 8 hours, make 100 calls, and have 100 people hang up on you or tell you you're shitty or they're not buying what you're selling.
So when I say the 5 seconds of a 37-second clip that need to come out because that part sucked, it's like, yeah, okay, I don't care.
It's not that I don't care. It's like you got to parse through and find the seed of the criticism, right? Yeah. Because everybody's got a personality, but at the end of the day, like, we're all here for the same reason. So it's like, okay, great. This was the feedback, but what is the end result, right? So, okay, video was bad. The end result is to make the video better. How do we do that? I'm not going to focus on the color was off and how could you do this? Not that these are things you've ever said, but
I don't know the color, so I don't know about that one.
The end result is making the video better. So if that's what I'm trying to take off, everything else is just, okay, great. Let's keep going. Like, you got to just be able to take things in stride in any industry, but I feel like doing this more than anything else, you got to just, and on Instagram too, like, oh, this video sucks, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, this, that, and the other thing. It's like, okay, great, I'm going to keep going though.
Yeah. So let's get into the creation of the content. Right now, I just mentioned it, the most important thing for anybody creating content. So if you're looking for a video producer, you should be asking these questions like, how are we going to frame hooks? What's our 3-second hook? This is something we've been very focused on. I think it's more important than we'll talk about the equipment, all the fancy equipment. And listen, we've spent tons of money, and I've been very like, we need, do we have the best mic? And I think audio is probably number 2 on all the content that is being created above the fancy cameras that we have. Lighting probably number 3, and then the quality of the camera number 4. So the content 1, the hook. But I think you focus on that. You focus on clear audio. You focus on the lighting should be decent, right? I think lighting, and then the camera quality. And we're not even getting into the editing, which maybe you would argue would be above one of those. But how are we creating? Let's break it down. How we're creating so much content out of one piece.
So our content strategy, when people see the output of content, the question we always get asked is, oh my God, where do you have the time for that? And it's really not that shocking that most of our content is just repurposed and rebroken down content. So what we do is at the top of our tree, we have our pillar content, these podcasts. This podcast will get broken down into several YouTube videos. And from those YouTube videos, it'll get broken down into even smaller pieces, TikToks, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts. Supplementary to that, we have your blog post. So this will get transcribed and summed up. That'll go on Broke Agent Media. So it's not every week we're thinking, oh, gee, how do we come up with 50 pieces of content? It's, okay, we have 2 pillar contents. How can we break these down in the most effective way possible, right? Right now, the most important part of that in our cycle is the bottom, is those 15 to 45-second clips that get people engaged, that get people to click through to BAM, to the articles, to everything else that we're doing.
What can a video producer do to take a pillar piece of content like long-form podcast and find the best clips that are going to convert on Instagram Reels? How do you find, out of a 45-minute podcast, 3 clips that are going to crush against the algorithm in a 30 to 60-second window?
So the best piece of content that we have right now is informative content that is also polarizing and a little bit, I would say, incendiary, right? Where somebody like you, who's a thought leader in the space, is giving valuable content on, let's say, the housing market's not a bubble, right? That's well thought out, well-researched content that you could back up with numbers, but is also something that a lot of people disagree with and a lot of people agree with at the same time.
And they're not going to, TikTok is showing us right now that if you don't get them to watch the full 3-second hook, the video is going to fail. And so home prices are not going to go down. Takes about 3 seconds, but it's a hook that's like, what did that person just say?
Yep.
Why are they saying that? What data do they have to back it up? What's their story? Who are they? And then you end up watching that TikTok 2 times over, which sends signals to the algorithm that's like, this should be listened to more and more. Now, when you're doing the long form podcast, and this is something we've worked on a lot the last 6 or 7 months, is how you're framing up the question so that they respond with a great hook, or that your question is the hook, right? And we've really been thoughtful of that. Even if you watch the Real Word podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you watch it in its entirety, when I am trying to engage a hook, right? I am framing up the things that I say in that pod. And so this does come down to the person performing the pod, right? To be just aware that, okay, instead of me, being monotone or delivering this information in my normal way, I need to maybe deliver the start of it in a very engaging, like you said, the word you used was polarizing format, so that it hooks people in when we clip this out.
Exactly. But you got to hook them with that first 3 seconds, and that'll get a lot of people at first glance, but you also have to keep them, right? And I feel like I'm scrolling through TikTok more and more, and I'm seeing people glean onto this style of a strong hook, but I'm more often than not seeing people completely fall off of that in terms of follow-through content, right? Which is, okay, I got you with a hook, but really there's no substance to what I'm saying. So they're equal parts important, and one without the other really doesn't work. You have to have a really cohesive clip that educates but is also engaging.
If someone's looking for a video producer and they didn't spend, before we met, I spent 8 years diving into this stuff on my own. They haven't done that. They're focused on their real estate business. They're running the company. They're running their business as an agent, whatever it may be. But they know they need to take this next step. They need a video producer on staff. They're going to hire somebody full time. What type of questions should they be asking during that interview process to find the right fit if they don't necessarily have all the starting information that I had?
So a couple things to break down there. I think that, so we use the DISC test here. I think that's a great sort of way to filter out people who you think would work well in your company culture.
That's good to understand how you're going to work with somebody personally. Absolutely.
On top of that, homework, right? Where it's like, here's a clip from content I've created in the past, or here is just a clip of me talking, right? Here's the content I'm looking to emulate. Can you get me from there to here?
Yeah, here's raw, here's what I want.
And then the third thing to that, it would be getting someone, and this is why I would say it's hard to find, somebody who is as eloquent in content creation language as they are in marketing language, right? Because more and more you find it going one way or the other, because somebody who's really well versed in marketing trends but doesn't quite know how to run a production isn't as effective as somebody who knows both, right? So you got to have somebody who knows, okay, this is a hook, this will convert well, this will drive traffic. You have to have somebody with a little bit of business know-how, right? They have to be able to trace the dots to, the thought process doesn't end at the clip, right? So like when I make a clip for you, for Real Word, for BAM, I know, okay, this clip is going to convert to this link, is going to get to the ebook, is going to get to the site. I can see the way down the funnel, as it were, where that viewer is going and how we're integrating them into the content ecosystem. So you have to get somebody who understands that. And I realize that's a unicorn thing. Find somebody who's coachable too, I would say, right? Like we talked about before, don't get somebody with thin skin. They have to be able to take feedback, internalize it, and effectively execute on it. Not just, well, I said the video sucked. Like, no, okay, the video was bad. How do we make it better, kind of thing?
So you right now have four editors under you,
yeah.
And then you've got Haley. So
yes.
But Haley will be gone by the end of the summer, so you're going to lose that luxury. But so if you were just you, if it was just you didn't have the 4 editors, and you were working with, say, just a real estate team, and you were going to create content, and you were giving your advice to this team of how you, just as an individual, you say you're going to find somebody who's going to be able to shoot video and do the editing themselves, which you can do. Yep. You're capable of all of that, the production, the shooting the video, the setup, the editing, even distribution. So somebody was going to be, well-rounded, the Swiss Army knife of video production for just the real estate team. What advice would you give them to focus on, because they only have so much time in a week? What type of content should they produce? What type of short clips? How much can you get done in a week?
So, great question. The advice I would give to somebody who works in sort of our field when it comes to the real estate would be that your time is your most important thing, right? Like, you're always working on something. So make your time as valuable as possible, especially with your editing. Focus on as much long-form content as possible.
Yeah.
That is evergreen, right? So you're not week to week. That can over time be broken down into shorter form clips, while focusing and devoting 1 day a week to just, here is a 4-hour block where we are going to record 60 to 80 clips, right? And you do that once a month and you're always a little bit ahead. Supplementing that with YouTube videos and podcasts. This is why we do podcasts, right? Like we have 4 or 5 podcasts that we do every day of the week, and all our content trickles down from there. So having that block content at the top where it's long, 35 to 40 minutes, that you can really just squeeze all the water out of that towel. So it's a blog post, it's a video clip, it's a YouTube video. I would focus on video podcasting. There's a lot of video podcasts in the real estate space right now.
It doesn't have to be an interview, by the way.
It doesn't.
The video podcast could be your own 3-segment show like we do with The Real Word or The Walkthrough. It could literally be you reacting to things that you see in your local community. It could be you breaking the news in your local community as a 10-minute, like think Jeremy Knight, what he does on YouTube. There's so many different, when we say podcast, there's so many different variations of it.
Exactly. And, time length is also, I feel like, something that people constrain themselves. Oh, I only got a 20-minute. People aren't going to listen to it. People are going to listen to your content.
I listen to a lot of 10-minute podcast clips over and over. Like, I'll listen to a whole podcast sometimes.
Just through the clips.
Through the clips.
Exactly. So do that, right? The other thing I would say is before you hire somebody, be ready to show up as much as they are, right? Yep. So the great thing I love about working here and working together is that there's never been a time where you're like, oh, I didn't like my voice in that clip. I did like, great, there's always another clip. The value was good. It'll convert well. You have to not be camera shy and be ready to put yourself out there just as much. Like, because if you're hiring somebody, but at the end of the day, throw out this clip, throw out that clip.
Or you need 3 hours to get your hair ready.
Exactly, right? So I think that's also something that in all the conversation we've had isn't talked about enough in all of the team leaders and stuff like that. Like, you got to be ready to show up as much as you want your video person to.
And you can't rely on, I would say, for that team leader or that agent that's thinking about this next step, you can't rely on the Bobby to have you've got to know what direction that you want to go in. It's your business, right? And I mean, every day I'm throwing stuff at you. How we can get better, or what I'm seeing, or I'm sending you a clip from somewhere else, or you're sending me back a clip. We're communicating every single day. It's funny because, we're in the real estate team office in Connecticut. We used to have a smaller office, and I've always, now I actually have a little room where I can hide from Bobby a little bit. But even before that, before Bobby, I was always sitting in the studio in the other office, so, whoever the production crew was, it's usually me in that room making my calls, doing everything, because I want to be this is such an important part of the business. I want to be close to it. I want to have my hands and my fingerprints in it. So you've got to know it. Maybe you don't have to be as hands-on as I am. We've got BAM going on and all this other stuff, but you've got to know what direction you should be going. You should be educating yourself as much as possible.
And to further that point, money-wise, like, freelancers are great and they do great work. I love our team. They do amazing work for us. But you have to have at least one person who is fully committed their entire day is the brand, right?
Well, freelancers are very tough. The minute they find something that is more aligned with their passion or a higher paying or fits better with their schedule, they're dropping you.
Exactly. And even outside of that, like yesterday, you texted me, hey, we need to record a BAM breaking in 20 minutes. And you were there. It was set up. I was in office. You were in office. And we turned that whole clip around in like an hour and 15 minutes from stem to stern. So I would say that it's also something important, is having somebody who is solely dedicated to making the best video content possible for your brand and for your company.
And being flexible, because even if you're going to produce a lot of evergreen content, there is going to be, no matter what, there's going to be opportunities for you to get exponential growth with your content if you hit the right trending story in your community, or you hit a big moment. And sometimes those moments pass. So it's like, turn that thing on and let's go.
Yep.
We've got to roll right now. That's the world we're living in, right? There's a shelf life. You put up an Instagram reel, it's good for 24 to maybe 48 hours.
Best, yeah.
At best, right? All right, let's talk about equipment a little bit, because it's a question that everybody has. Break down the equipment to pull off one of these podcasts, which could be a 10-minute show, could be Q&A, could you be reacting, could you be interviewing? Yes. What's the equipment look like to pull that off?
Yeah, so you're going to need, if you want something that looks like this, right? You can have a cheaper version of the equipment you're using. I mean, we're using several $1,000 cameras, $400 mics, a very expensive computer, but there's a cheaper version of this, right? You can get $200 mics, a $100 audio interface that plugs into your 3-year-old MacBook and maybe 3 okay cameras, and that's enough.
And an okay camera is going to cost what?
You know, if you get it new, you can get a decent mirrorless camera for about $1,100. If you want to even go secondhand, like eBay, like I'm a big proponent. Most camera people treat their stuff pretty well, so I have no qualms with getting camera equipment secondhand. You can get them even cheaper on a good deal sometimes.
And then the lighting is going to cost for decent lighting on Amazon.
Lighting, you're looking at about $300 for like a 2 LED light setup, right? Once you start adding a softbox or like a big aperture light, you get a little more expensive.
Somebody could do a nice podcast setup where the quality is certainly leveled up and pretty close to this for how much all in?
$4,000. I'd say
$4,000. That much, Bobby? What if I got $2,000? Can I pull it off?
You can pull it. You can pull it off with anything, right? You can plug.
I'm not talking about the computer because they already have a laptop.
Gotcha. Okay. So then if you're excluding the laptop, yeah, you're well within that $2,000 range, right?
Okay.
Certainly so.
Could you do it for $1,500 if you take the computer out of it?
Yes. Oh, definitely.
Could we make it happen for $1,000?
That's where that's where your camera quality starts to dip.
Okay. But what if you take the camera out? Could you pull all of this off with these mics and everything and film from your phone?
Certainly. And if you're just starting out, especially if you're a solo podcast,
I would say camera comes last, right?
Yes.
All right.
Certainly so, right? Audio, lighting are your pillars, right? And audio above all else. If you're doing it on an iPhone, there's plenty of great solutions that companies like Rode and Shure make, where it's either a lav mic or even a mic that'll look like this but plug directly into your phone and give you great audio as well.
And right now, the best place to upload your podcasts are?
Anchor. Anchor is pretty much where we do all of our podcasts since we started BAM. All of our podcasts have been transitioned on there. It's the most user-friendly simply because Anchor is owned by Spotify, and currently, to my knowledge, it's the only way to get video podcasts on Spotify.
On Spotify specifically.
But what Anchor will do is distribute all your stuff automatically, right? So you don't have to wait for your RSS.
It's going to go to Apple. It's going to go to, if you want it to go to SoundCloud.
Podbean, Overcast, all these, secondary services.
It'll go to Google Podcast?
It'll go to Google Podcast. Anchor will just distribute it for you.
Okay.
And then you just have to log into there.
In terms of the setup, I don't want to go too deep into that because I do want team leaders. I do want agents. I do want these business operators to just take action on it. It's what we talked. Like if you missed last week's pod with Lisa Chinati, we were talking about a little bit this with her. She needs to step her game up. Go back to last week's pod with Lisa. It was a great pod. But we did an ebook on this that you had a big part of. And it's on BAM. It's on Broke Agent Media. We'll link it below. It's a free ebook. It walks you through exactly how to set up the podcast. There's a whole bunch of links there to check out the stuff, but it'll show you, low cost production.
Yeah. So the way we structure the ebook.
We should do a BAM yearbook.
Oh, that would be.
That's a good idea.
Haley.
BAM yearbook.
The ebook is structured through 3 different price tiers where it'll be effective no matter your skill level or your budget, right? The main thing is just start, right? Like we hear and we work with TF all the time where he's like, you just got to start. And it might sound like common advice, but it's common because it's true.
And so my hope is with the free ebook on podcast setup is that eliminates those questions of, well, what? Because people will do this all the time, whether it's video production or becoming a real estate agent or anything else. Like how many times have I said, you've heard me say this, and I've said it to the team, like, don't be that new agent that it's like, okay, I'm going to really start making my calls next week once I go out and get a better phone and a better laptop and a better notebook. I need to go to the store now that I became an agent and spend all week shopping for stuff that's going to just do it. You already have a phone. Just make the calls. The numbers are there. Just do it.
The most effective time block I've ever had in my life is when I started going week to week by the numbers, right? Like Gary Vee had that thing where there's only 52 Mondays in a year. And once you start contextualizing, okay, I'm in week 28. I'm almost halfway done. I don't have a lot of time left to be dilly-dallying.
And now that you've got a newborn on the way,
yes,
you don't have much time.
I don't have much time for anything anymore.
At all.
Exactly.
To be wasting. What I will tell you about this, here's a little advice I haven't given you about this.
Okay.
Is when I didn't have it. My wife had the kid. But when we had our first child, it really sped things up for me. I got to start making very clear decisions. Some things need to get out of my life immediately, and I need to start moving at a faster rate, which means I need to be more efficient with my time. All of that just started happening a lot quicker for me because now I'm like on this, 18-year run of having to support a child, which is insane.
Yeah, you're on that treadmill for life.
So, for life, I would say 18 years, and then you're out.
Then you're done.
It definitely, it starts to put a little kick in your step.
Yeah, and I mean, the
in a good way.
Totally in a good way. And the common thread I think here is business and creative video go much more hand in hand. I started implementing time blocking in my day, even just passively, where I feel more productive, right? So like your advice to the new agents is, okay, as little as possible white space in your Google Calendar.
Yeah, as little white space and or as little time wasted. Because everybody wastes time, and if you want to be average and ordinary, cool, spend a whole bunch of time in your calendar hanging out with average and ordinary people, right? I don't spend any time with average and ordinary people.
No, certainly not.
So I want to really fill up my calendar with people that are going to enhance the way I'm thinking, that are going to help me learn, that are going to push me in another direction, that want to grow, that want to get better, that want to do more, that want to build, right? And that's where you should be filling up your calendar with stuff like that.
Yeah, and as a producer, don't be afraid to not know things, right? Like, not everybody knows everything, but be willing to call yourself out on, man, I don't know as much about audio mixing as I want to. Great. So that hour, instead of watching Stranger Things, I guarantee you there is more.
How many less video games have you played since you started working here?
Oh my God. The PlayStation's collecting dust. It's slowly collecting dust. So
too many code reds.
Way too many. That's another BAM theme. There's always a
inside joke. There's always a code red, even if it's really like a code slightly yellow.
It's always red.
Everything is a disaster waiting to happen.
Maximize your time and be as invested in the final product as the people you're making it for, right? So like, I care about the clips because I know that we will all get better if this clip does well, kind of thing, right?
Absolutely. No, 100%. We've talked a bunch, and we have our real estate agent course. We'll link that below if you're interested in, becoming a better agent, and there's some really good Instagram hacks and social media hacks in there. But we're talking about a course right now about producing a course around this stuff. We're talking about doing a course. So in the comments, love to know if you'd want a course on all the ways we're producing content. And, obviously the setup would be part of that. The ebook is there, so that's free. You can just grab
the
that.
Ebook is just a video version, or the video would be,
editing. What would be in that course? And the second part of that is we've also thrown the idea. So we're looking for your feedback right now. We've also thrown out the idea of Bobby doing a podcast regularly, whether that's, monthly or weekly or whatever that looks like, where it's Bobby and other video producers, so that you could just listen into that pod and hear some of the new hacks, the things that they're testing. So would you like a course that's super tactical, teaching every step of the way of how we're doing the clips and all of that? And then secondarily, would you like that ongoing discussion of what's changing and the mindset from the behind the camera video production side?
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing you hear from all these YouTube gurus kind of thing is create the content you want to see, right? And coming up, there's a lot of content on cool camera hacks, and here's how you use a green screen, and here's how you do slow motion B-roll. But for the content we create and for the way content is trending, I haven't been able to find somebody who says, okay, so you want to be a video producer. Here's the 5 skills you need to get really good at to make yourself attractive to a company that's looking to hire someone to create short form, engaging, high conversion video. I don't know where those videos are, so I'm really looking forward to making them. On the podcast side of things, I also don't know everything. And there's plenty of people in our space who I can point to where I'm like, hey, that was a good video. How'd they do that, right? Or, man, they are putting out so much content, or their font is great. Like, is that what is making their video exciting? So
now, what's the difference in the editing? Are they doing something that's saving time? All of that.
Right. And even just like shortcuts and little tips and hacks, right? Like there's plenty of people who edit in Premiere or DaVinci or Final Cut, and these are all editing programs, and people like that know. But okay, sure, I edit in Premiere, but we've worked with people that work in Final Cut. So is it maybe devoting a little bit of time every week to being familiar with all the programs so that you are sort of dangerous across the board?
And you're giving out some tips on Instagram and TikTok right now. Bobby's a great follow. We'll link him up below.
Appreciate it.
Start following Bobby along. And this is a pretty cool pod, man. I've never, on this particular podcast, I've never done someone who's not a CEO. And usually people listen like, wow, this is so much different, because it's usually CEO in the industry, thought leader, or big team leader. And so, this was
totally
from
different.
That.
Yeah.
But I did think it was very important to bring this type of value to the audience. So let us know in the comments if you like this, if you want more of it. Also, we had 2 podcasts this week.
We did have 2 podcasts this
week. If you got to the end of this one, thank you very much. But we have a second podcast, not on YouTube. It's just on the audio only Byron Lazine podcast.
Yep.
It's with the CEO of Sisu. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Brian, we did a podcast with him, and
there were some technical difficulties.
It was the first time we had technical difficulties doing a virtual podcast with the video output. Mm-hmm. And this is stuff we're going to talk about more too. Like,
that's a whole section of the course unto itself, is how do you podcast when somebody's across the country and not make it look bad?
And maybe they don't have great internet, which is maybe what we don't know what happened there with that one. But the audio came out fine. Mm-hmm. There's a ton of value in that. We'll link that below as well. So if you want to go check out that on wherever you listen to podcasts, that is up today. So it's a double header edition. And Bobby, this was super fun.
Yes, a lot of fun.
I believe that we can pull off the Bobby behind the scene pod.
Yes.
In the future, obviously, the course, but we want your feedback on all of those things. But I really just appreciate the way that you've showed up every single day. You've been super committed. You've been accountable. You've had thick skin. You've always tried to get better. We've grown together. We're going to keep growing. I love you for that, brother.
Thank you. Love being here.
Really appreciate you.
Cheers.
All right. We'll see you guys on the next one.